Welcome to The Explainer, everyone. Today we're jumping straight into a truly fascinating intersection, the place where the hidden psychology of human influence crashes right into creative writing. We're going to unpack a brief but incredibly dense text that explores the concept of nudges and a powerful framework known as the Feast strategy. If you've ever found yourself wondering how the exact phrasing of a sentence can quietly, almost invisibly shape human actions, well, you're in exactly the right place. We're going to get into the absolute nitty-gritty of how this actually works. So let's get to it. But right before we dive into the actual mechanics outlined in the text, just think about this for a second. Can your decisions be influenced without you even knowing it? Like zero clue? We all really like to believe we're in total, conscious control of our choices, right? Especially when we sit down to read a story or an article. We think we're just passively absorbing information. But what if the very structure of the information in front of you was quietly, invisibly guiding your hand the entire time?
All right, let's unpack this. The source material we're looking at today introduces this exact concept, an unseen hand guiding our choices. And that's the core analytical focus of today's text. It's looking at how writing goes way beyond just telling a story or spitting out facts, and actually crosses over into systematically shaping behavior. We're stepping away from the idea of writing as mere communication, and we're looking at it as an active tool for designing a behavioral response. It's essentially about turning a passive reader into an active participant, completely under the radar.
Let's look really closely at the foundational definition the source gives us. It defines a nudge as the gentle encouragement based on the technology of the decision-making process. I actually want to pause here for a second because we really need to treat this phrasing like the profound maxim it is. The technology of the decision-making process. What does that even mean? Well, it implies that human decision-making isn't just random. It's not just emotional chaos. It actually has a structure. It has a reliable system. It's literally a technology. And a nudge is simply a way to interface with that technology. And notice that word gentle. It's not a shove. It's not some strict mandate. It's this highly calculated encouragement that aligns perfectly with how our brains are naturally hardwired to process choices. Now, this brings up a really profound juxtaposition. We literally just talked about a gentle encouragement. Sounds super soft and easygoing, right? But the core impacts outlined here are massive. We are talking about the remarkable power of change and the literal modification of human behavior. And crucially, the text points out that it achieves this through cost-effective actions. Honestly, that is the absolute genius of the nudge. You don't need massive resources, sweeping rules, or heavy-handed enforcement to change how people act. By simply understanding that technology of decision-making, a tiny, practically free, gentle shift in how you present words can trigger a massive behavioral modification in the real world.
Okay, so how do we actually harness this? How do we apply this incredible power to our own writing? Well, our source introduces a brilliant framework for this, the Feast strategy. And to be clear, this isn't just some quick formatting hack. It is a holistic, overarching toolkit. Let's break down exactly what this acronym stands for. First up, F stands for fun. If you want to nudge a reader toward an action, the journey has to be enjoyable. In writing, you might use humor or an engaging narrative, maybe even a bit of gamification to just lower the reader's defenses. Next is E for easy. The human brain naturally resists friction. So if you want someone to adopt a new perspective, you have to write in a way that removes the cognitive load. Use clear, concise language. Keep structures simple, so the path of least resistance leads exactly where you want them to go. Then we have A for attractive. Make the desired choice emotionally appealing. In a story, make the behavior you're encouraging seem highly desirable and rewarding for the characters. S stands for social. We're social creatures, right? We're deeply influenced by what others do. A writer can tap into this by highlighting social norms within the text, showing that everyone else is doing this, which naturally nudges the reader to follow the pack. And finally, T is for timely. A nudge only works if it's delivered at the exact moment the reader is receptive. You have to pace your narrative so that the big call to action, or the major thematic reveal, hits exactly when the reader's emotional engagement is at its absolute peak. So Feast is the structural framework that takes the totally abstract idea of a nudge and turns it into a tangible design.
Now, just consider the shift this creates when we compare standard writing to this new behavioral approach. Standard writing might be perfectly grammatical, beautifully descriptive, but it's fundamentally static. It's just putting words out there for the reader to take or leave. But applying the Feast strategy, that transforms the written word from a passive transfer of info into a dynamic, deliberate, impactful strategy. It systematically guides the reader toward a specific realization. By making the text fun, easy, attractive, social, and timely, you aren't just describing a path anymore, you're quietly paving it in a way that makes the reader naturally choose to walk down it.
And that leads us right to the ultimate thesis of our source material. I want to read this exact quote from the text deliberately because, honestly, this is the dramatic climax of the whole explainer. Application of nudges enable you to influence human decision-making without the person realized it. Just think about the sheer power of that psychological technique, especially now that you know the detailed mechanics of the FEAST framework. The true strength of the nudge lies entirely in its invisibility. You are actively shaping human decision-making, modifying behavior through strategic storytelling, but doing it so seamlessly that the person on the receiving end feels they arrived at that conclusion entirely on their own. Mind-blowing, right?
So we've explored the gentle but truly remarkable power of this invisible influence. We've seen exactly how a cost-effective modification in writing can tap into the very technology of human decision-making using the pillars of fun, easy, attractive, social, and timely writing. Which leaves us with one final, provocative thought to chew on as we wrap up today's explainer. You are now fully aware of the unseen hand. You're stepping into the role of a newly minted behavioral architect. So, knowing the profound underlying power of this strategy, how are you going to use the nudge in your next story? Thank you so much for joining me for this deep dive, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.